Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards, and today's session is going to be looking at another small group session. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to give us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Moving into part one of this week's session, before we get going, we're going to look at how many players we've got this week and the equipment that we're using. So we've got 4 players this week, but you can easily adapt it if you do have 5 players, and even if you have less players, if you have 3, or even if you're doing a one-to-one session. In terms of equipment this week, the main things we're looking at is cones and footballs, but then if you do have poles for later on in the session, that would also work quite well. So moving into part one of this week's session, we're looking at a sprinting and turning drill. We're going to be sprinting just normally at first, and then we're going to move on to a back pedal, and then you can bring the ball in later on if you want to. So we're going to split the players into 2 groups of 2, so there's not as much rest time. So we're going to set up with a cone at the start, and then the next cone is going to be 5 yards away. The cone after that is 6 yards, 7 yards, and 8 yards. Okay, so it's working on fast sprints, slowing ourselves down, and then bursting out again to turn. So it's doing all of the cones in one before the next person goes. So the first player will sprint up, get round the first cone, which is 5 yards away, get back, and then get round again to go to the 6 yards, and then back to the 7 yards, and back, and then back to the 8 yards and power through. It's important that they get round the cones so they're actually moving the footwork around the cones and not just turning when you get back here. Okay, it's a bit like cheating really, so make sure that the players get round each time. Okay, and it's a nice focus to have if they run up, when they run up to the cones, get a low body position, which enables them to turn quicker instead of standing up straight. It means that the body can shift to the side quicker and then burst out and accelerate. The next time you do it, it's going to be sprinting up again, but as they approach the cone, it's going to be a back pedal around the cone and back to the start, and then the same again, up to the 6 yards, back pedal to the start, up to the 7, back pedal to the start, and then up to the 8 yards and back pedal to the start. So each player should do 2 reps each time for each set, so you can do as many sets as you want to do, and then you can do it with the ball if you want to as well, but because the gaps are quite small in here, it might be best off just doing it without the ball. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Okay, so moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're now going to be focused on our sprinting and backpedaling, but you can also do it to sprint and turn. So all the players are going to start at the first cone here, okay, obviously a few meters apart. So the setup is going to be, it's going to be 5 yards into the middle cone here and then 5 yards back, and then it's 10 yards up to the next cone and then 5 yards back again, another 10 yards up before 5 yards back, and then one more 10 yards up. So we're focusing on sprinting out, backpedaling, and then bursting out. Okay, so it's a transition from defence to attack and also attack to defence. So the players are going to sprint up, get round and backpedal, so around the cones again, so they're working that fast footwork, sprint up and get round. As soon as the players reach the middle cone here, then the next player can go and the players can move up one. The player's going to get around again, backpedal, and then one last sprint through. Okay, and it's going to be a light jog to the back of the queue, and the players are going to do it 3 times before resting. And like I say, you can change it up. I can just do it sprints all the way, so it's sprint and turn, sprint and turn, sprint and turn all the way through. And then if you want to do it with the ball as well, it can be working on that dribbling, so get the ball out of the feet and then nice close control, and then get the burst of acceleration again, so keeping the ball within the vicinity of the body, but also a few yards away so that they can actually run onto the ball and then get close control of it as they're coming around the corners. Close control again, and then burst out. Okay, so they're trying to get away from the defender, and then nice close control as they're coming into turn. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to part 3 of this week's session. Now moving into part 3 of this week's session, it's our final SAQ/ball work type of drill. So now we're bringing in our sprinting and backpedaling with also our control as well. Okay, so we're going to have one player with the ball here, and then the other player who's going to be working is going to start on the middle cone here. And then we're going to go to set up. You want to go 5 yards into the middle here, and then go 2 yards either side, and then you can another 2 yards backwards on an angle. Okay, so the players have got to go to every cone and back and receive a pass in the air. So the first time the players do it, they're going to do 2 reps each. So they've got to get to each cone and back each time. Once they've done it, they swap over. And then once they both had to go, swap over and do it again. So it's a continuous workout. So the players, first time they do it, it's going to be thrown to the chest or the knee or to the feet, but in the air. So they're focusing on that control in the air once they get back. So they'll sprint up to a cone, and then they'll back pedal to the start. The player who's got the ball will get to that cone, what they've gone to. They'll throw them the ball. It'll be a touch, play back, and then they'll go to another cone. So then that player will then follow over to there, and then they get themselves back. So they're working off different angles. It'll get thrown in again. So again, try and test the touch with the chest or the knee or even the feet. Play it back in. And once they've been to all 4, they'll swap over. And then the second time the players do it, it's the same type of thing, but we're just changing. Instead of controlling the ball, it's going to be a header. So you want them to throw the ball up quite high, so the players have got to get up and meet the ball. So it's sprinting, back pedal back. Once they get back to the cone, throw the ball up and meet the ball. So it's important for the player who's going to receive it to tell the player to wait to throw the ball. So they don't want to be backpedaling halfway and this player's throwing the ball, because then they're going to have to keep going back to head the ball. So they want to try and get as far back to the cone before asking for it. And it's also important to use that spring from the step, from keeping those heels off the ground, okay, nice and light on the feet, to then jump up and get a bit of power in the jump to head the ball back. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to this week's 4-corner model. Okay, so looking at this week's 4-corner model, starting off with technical and tactical, looking at our SAQ-based drills. We've mentioned them in the last couple of episodes about pumping our arms, fast feet, keeping our heels off the ground as well. Doing all them things enables us to move quickly, okay, enables us to turn quickly around corners and then burst off into an acceleration back to where we're going to. And then moving into our technical-based drills, looking at our movement to receive the ball. Okay, so we're going to be moving different ways to receive the ball in our technical drills now. So we're going to be receiving on inside the poles and cones, on the outside. So our movement to receive, to then work on our receiving skills of having our body position to where the ball's coming from to where it's going to go. So then looking at our first touch, where we're going to take our first touch to where our pass is going to be. So then we're looking at our execution of our passes. Do we want it to be in front of the player? Do we want it to be to their feet? How fast do we want to play it? How far in front of the player do we want to play it? And then when we receive the ball, we're doing some 1v1 work and driving with the ball. So we want to drive the ball with speed, okay? So it's a good first touch and then drive into space as quick as we can. Looking at the psychological corner, again, we're looking at our awareness, so our spatial awareness, so making sure we're scanning our surroundings, having a look where the space is, where we're going to move into, and then determination. So when we're working hard in those first couple of SAQ drills, making sure we're determined to finish, to go as hard as we can, to go as fast as we can for the whole drill. And then confidence, so when we're moving into 1v1 drills now, and then movements to receive the balls and then play through balls, okay, having that confidence to play that pass with a bit of speed, okay, not being afraid to underhit the ball. When you're driving at a player, being confident to do a step over and take them on. And then positive attitude again, which we've been speaking about, to relay onto the players, okay, so they are working hard, okay, it takes a lot out of them to do it, so making sure that they turn up with a positive attitude, okay, and they're ready to do everything that we're setting out for them. Looking at the physical corner, again, looking at our speed, both with and without the ball. So without the ball, it's sprinting up to the cones, what we're getting to, getting round and then bursting off. And then with the ball, it's having the speed to drive with the ball and then slow ourselves down around the corners and then burst out. So we're looking at our ABCs again. So when we're talking about getting into the corners quickly, okay, then we want to slow ourselves down, get a low body position to get out. So looking at our agility and our balance, and then our explosiveness, so bursting out. So once we turn them corners, bursting out into a nice sprint, okay, so let's say we're getting the ball from an attacker to then driving into a 1v1 scenario. So you want to drive a defender at pace. If we're too slow, the defender then can then delay us very easily, okay, and show us where they want us to go. Whereas if we drive into space quickly, okay, we put them on the back foot, and any change of direction, we're able to go where we want to. And then finally, our endurance. So when we're working for a minute, for 30 seconds, when we're doing lots of repetitions, making sure we're working to our maximum all the way throughout. And then finally, looking at our social corner, so starting off with communication. Okay, so we spoke about it quite a lot recently. The player who's going to be receiving the ball, asking for the ball when they want it, okay? So if they don't ask for it, the player's just going to play it when they first see them. They might not want it then, so just tell the player to hold the pass and then scream for the ball. And then vice versa with the player who's playing the ball, talking to the player of where they should be moving to. Okay, so just little bits of communication to help the players out. Encouragement, so encouraging our players. This is good for a coach and the players, okay? When the players are working hard, to keep encouraging them. Good positive reinforcement so that they can push themselves all the way to the end. And then finally, working together as a group. Okay, so we want all the players working together, not working as individuals, okay? So relaying that positive attitude as a team and not just as individuals. Right, before we carry on with the rest of the video, I've got some exciting news. I'm now offering one-to-one sessions for players based in the Merseyside area. For more information, head over to my Instagram. Now let's get back into the video. Okay, so moving into part 4 of this week's session, we're now moving into our technical drills of this session. So we're going to be splitting our players into 2 groups again. Okay, so the setup is going to be, the player here is going to be the player passing the ball. There's going to be a 10-yard gap between the first cone here and the line here, which is starting there. So it's going to be 12 yards from the start here up to the back cone. Okay, and then it's going to be 6 this way from the middle and 6 that way. So it's 12 each there, 12 each side. And then the middle box in here is literally just going to be 2 yards by 2 yards. So it's focusing on that first touch when we do move on to controlling in the box to take it to the way that we're going to work to. So it's going to be 2 different parts to this session. The first part is the player who's got the ball is going to shout left, right or back. That player then has to move to that cone or pole, if you want to use a pole, okay? And then they'll receive the ball on the inside of the cone or the pole. They'll take it on the outside before passing back and getting themselves back into the middle. So we're looking at our movement to receive the ball, our receiving skills, our first touch, and then execution of passes. We want nice, firm passes. As soon as they get back into the box, okay, to play it in again, they might say back. So we want to get themselves to the back, okay, open out, so it's a nice back pedal, then open out, play it back in. So the players are going to work for a minute, and then they're going to swap over, and then you can either do it again, or you can move on to the next part, which will be the player will receive it in the box, and then they will go to where they're going to. So when the player will play it in, still give the same instructions, so they'll say right. So if they say right, it's a nice touch, out the box, drive it into space, get themselves around the cone, play it back. As they're getting back into the box, as soon as they're there, play it in. So if they say back, open ourselves out, get round the cone, and then play back through. And they'll do that for a minute as well. Okay, so it's the main thing is on our first touch. So first, it's our movement to receive for our first touch, and then secondly, it's our movement. It's our first touch to take us where we're going to go. Okay, so we're looking at our movement, our first touch, and then looking at our execution of our passes. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to part 5 of this week's session. Now moving into part 5 of this week's session, we're now looking at a drill which is focusing on our movement to receive the ball, our receiving skills, our first touch to open out, and then our timing of our runs to receive the ball. So we're going to have 2 players behind the start cone here and 2 players in the wide areas. So from the start cone to the middle cone here, it's just 5 yards. And then we're doing another 5 yards to the 2 poles here. You don't have to use poles, you can just use cones. But if you do have poles, it's better to use them because the players see them as they've got to get round them a lot harder than what it is with the cones. Okay, so they treat them more as a defender. And then we've got the 2 players in the wide areas. So they're going to be 10 yards from the middle cone here, each side. So we've got 20 yards of width there. And then again, it's a nice 5-yard run, but you can put it even further back if you wanted to make it a bit of a further run. So the coach is going to be involved with this, that you're going to be playing with the ball. So the player's going to run in centrally. They're either going to receive on the left or the right. It's either for them to go to, it doesn't really matter. The first time we do it, they're going to receive on the inside of the pole to open out and play to the player who's on the same side of them. So the player's going to sprint in, okay, then they're going to sprint left or right, okay, and then going to receive on the inside of the pole to then open out. As soon as they've taken that touch, that's when we want to make our run. So we don't want to run inside, we want to be a curve run on the outside. So then the player's going to play it a couple of yards in front to run onto and drive the ball through the gate where they'll join the back of the queue. The player who's then played the through ball will go into the wide area. All right, so then the next player who goes will go to the opposite side. So the player will run in to here, get themselves inside the pole with the movements of their body position, looking where the ball's coming from the coach, and then able to receive on the back foot to then play to the player in the wide area. Okay, the reason we're not receiving on the outside to play into the wide area is because we're taking up a lot of space in there, okay? And realistically, with defenders, there's no space to play it. Whereas if we pull out into here, okay, we can create some space for ourselves. We can get the attention of the fullback here, so then we can go into a wide area to play through. Okay, so then again, we're looking to receive on the run, to drive the ball in, go to the back of the queue, and then the midfielder here goes into a wide area. How we progress this drill is the player will then receive on the outside of the pole, and they're going to play to the opposite player, so a bit more of a diagonal pass. Okay, so the player's going to sprint in, get themselves on the outside, nice first touch to receive, and then this player's going to be on the run again, receiving on the run to drive the ball through. Okay, now this player again is still going to get to the other side. It's not that much of a movement, and also the next player goes to the alternate to the other side, so they've got time to get in there. So again, it's focused on that nice movement there, and then a nice burst out into the outside pole, into the outside of the pole, a good first touch again to our body position, where the coach is, okay, where you're going to play the ball, open out with one touch, get onto the ball, play it in for that player on the run who gets in and takes the ball. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Okay, so moving into the final part of this week's session, we're now moving into a 1v1 drill. So we're going to split the players up into two teams, but it doesn't really matter because they're going to alternate where they go anyway afterwards. So it's just going to be, they're going to be playing against different people. So the setup is, they've got 3 cones on their line here. Okay, so the middle cone starts here, and then it's 4 yards each side. And then from the middle cone here into the middle is 6 yards. And then the middle box here is 8 by 8. And then from here again is 6, so it's 20 yards a depth in here. So we've got 8 yards across, and then we've got another 4 yards each side here for a bit more width. And then the gates are just 2 by 2 each one, so we've got 4 different gates that the players can dribble through. So the ball starts with the coach. The players have to run to the right-hand side first, around the cone. Then they have to run to the left-hand side. And then whoever's quickest to them cones, the coach will then play the ball to. So then one player is attacking, one player is defending. In order to score, they have to get into the middle box before they change direction, whatever they're going to go to. If they drive through the box and go to one of the gates which are in front of them, they get 2 points. If they drive through the box and then turn back and go to a gate behind them, they only get 1 point. If the defender wins the ball, they can then score in any gate to get 2 points because they've won the ball back off the attacker. So then we want them to instantly go and attack whatever gate they can. So the players have to make sure they get into the box before they go and score, okay? Because they could just instantly just receive the ball and go and get 1 point dead easy, so it doesn't give the defender any chance. As soon as the play is finished, they'll go back to the nearest queue. They can go swap sides. It doesn't really matter, just as long as they play against different people each time. The next two will go again. So it's run to the right, get around, run to the left. Whoever's first will get the ball, and then we want the players to drive into the box at speed. So we're putting this defender on the back foot, okay? They don't know where to go, and then we've got more of a chance of a little bit of skill, change the direction, and then driving through the gate to score a goal, okay? So if the player comes out here and they're driving dead slow with the ball, they're just dribbling too slow up to the defender, they're going to be on the front foot, okay? All the space is going to be behind, but they haven't got the momentum to take them on, okay? So there's more chance when they try and change direction that the defender can win the ball because they've got the momentum, and then they can go and get the ball and score. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. For more content, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and TikTok. The links will be in the description below, and we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.